This episode of the Miss Spots podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime, the amazing service from Amazon that allows you to get free 2-day shipping on nearly every item available on their website, plus access to Amazon Prime Music and Prime Video service with tons of movies and TV shows, including the acclaimed original series Transparent starring Jeffrey Tambor. Now you can get a free 3-month trial of Amazon Prime by going to missspots.com/prime. Plus, if you do that, Amazon's going to throw in a free 3-month trial of HBO on your Prime Video. Nothing else you have to say or do. You get that for free with this trial as well. That way you can catch up on Game of Thrones, Westworld, or you can watch anything from HBO's amazing back catalog, like The Sopranos, The Wire. It's all there for you. After your trial, you can pay just $99 for the entire year of Prime. Trust me, that sounds like a lot, but as a Prime member myself, that money more than pays for itself in just 2-day shipping after just a couple of months. So head over to missspots.com/prime right now and try Amazon Prime for free for 3 months and join what practically everyone should be a part of, Amazon Prime.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event.
It's time to play the game. Time to play the game.
Welcome back to the Miss Spots podcast on missspots.com, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn, and Geek Life Radio. My name is Mike, and with me, as always, is the animal to my Heidenreich. Here's Kevin.
You somehow managed to pick the third worst iteration of LOD.
Who was
I
this?
mean, well, the second one would be Draws being involved in Legion of Doom. So you picked Heidenreich. Cheers to that. Good job, Mike.
Thank you. And cheers to you, Kevin, for being a first-time father now.
Well, right back at you, my friend. Well, you
Not
even
a
though you're
first-time father.
well, you know what I mean. Cheers. Thank you very much. Because of that situation, I have not watched a minute of professional wrestling this week.
And
So
understandably so.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to ask you to run these things down for me, and I'm going to be very interested in what happened because I had no idea.
That's no problem at all. So we'll jump right into Monday Night Raw. Oh, yeah, and because of that, we are recording via Skype. So if the sound is a little off from normal, that's why. So Raw kicked off with a match, believe it or not.
What? I mean, listen, we've got new graphics, different feel. I was very happy with the episode last week, so I'm glad to see maybe a little bit of change coming.
A little bit. I think that the quality of the show took a step back. I feel like they always do that. Like when they bring up new Raw stuff, like or new rebrandings, it's like, oh, this is good. And then the next week, it's like they just settled back into what they know.
Comfort zone.
We kicked off with an Elimination Chamber qualifying match. Roman Reigns taking on his old nemesis, Bray Wyatt.
Well, this was a continuation of the 3 matches that we had from the week before, correct? The qualifying matches.
Yes,
for the
more qualifying matches for the Elimination Chamber. We had 2 this week in order to create 5 people in there. They then announced later on in the show that they would be having a fatal 4-way or was it a fatal 4-way or fatal 5-way? It was a second chance multi-man match with all of the losers to fill the last spot.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
So this got a good amount of length to it. It was about 20 minutes or so, and it was what you expect from Bray and Roman. They've had matches before, good matches, and Roman wins. There was some good false finish work. Bray hit Sister Abigail for a big near fall, and the crowd seemed really into it. But you know who was going to win, and the person who was going to win won.
How did Bray look in this match?
I mean, he looked good because we all know that he's a good performer. He's a good in-ring hand, and he pulled his part to this. But then, you know, that's really all that you can say. After the match, as Roman had left, Matt Hardy showed up in the ring while Bray was getting up, doing the delete chant, and then hit a twist of fate, and that was that.
Well, not surprising at all, but at least they put Bray in that position. Honestly, why would he be in line to even get a qualifying match for the Elimination Chamber based on what he's done recently? So at least they're giving him a shot there.
Yeah, that's true. I did think that in the whole aftermath of things, it was funny because Matt was behind him. Bray was like pulling himself up on the ropes, and Matt's just laughing maniacally. And Cole's like, Bray doesn't know he's behind him. Like, if he can't hear Matt Hardy laughing 2 feet behind him, something's up. And he knew. You could tell in his eyes that he's like, he's behind me, isn't he? Also, if they weren't showing it on the Tron, that too would have lent a little more to Cole's excuse there, but he absolutely knew he was behind him. You could tell in his facial reaction. But that was that. Then we had a little bit of backstage going on because Jordan and Seth were going to get their tag team title rematch against the Bar. And it's Seth and Jordan talking. Seth going, "Hey man, are you 100%? Are you really in this? I can't have you just standing on the outside and not helping." And Jordan assures him, "Yes, I'm absolutely fine. I've been cleared. I'm in this match for you." Now, word came out earlier in the day from, the dirt sheets that Jason Jordan is not okay. He has a serious neck issue and has to undergo surgery. Surgery which apparently he had yesterday, on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Because what I read was that, yes, I heard that, but then I also heard that was erroneous and he actually did not need surgery. But you're saying he actually did have surgery.
That is a weird thing because his wife, his real life wife, came out and said that that's all fake news. No, he's going to be out for a little bit of time, but he doesn't need surgery. But then people were reporting yesterday he had surgery yesterday.
Okay.
So we'll see. But obviously later this led to Kurt saying, no, you haven't been cleared to compete, so you can't be in this match. Seth, you need to forfeit. And Seth's like, well, can I find another partner? And then Roman just kind of walks up behind him, like, sup?
Like Roman tends to do.
Yeah, pretty much. So we will have a quasi-Shield team going up against the Bar later on in the evening. The next match that we have is supposed to be Finn Balor taking on Dash Wilder, but as the Revival come out, they have microphones and they are talking about how we're tag team specialists. We're not here to be in singles matches. So how about you, Finn, pick one of your buddies to team with you and take on the tag team specialists. And, wrestlers making their own matches. Finn picks Carl Anderson. So it turns into a tag team match. And we get Anderson and Balor going over on the Revival. It was a pretty standard sub 10-minute tag team TV match.
Well, that's really interesting to me because honestly, that's the best thing for a tag team to ever say is that we're a tag team. We're not singles wrestlers. I mean, that is picture perfect booking, interesting booking. I love every aspect of that. And they should have gone in there and they should have won.
They should have.
they're the tag team specialists. They should have beat a makeshift tag team that do not tag together on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were they? I mean, did they quote unquote make them look strong in defeat, or was this just kind of a pedestrian match?
I thought it was pretty pedestrian looking. I mean, there was a little back and forth at one point, but nothing nothing crazy good out of it to absolutely cement the Revival as the specialists, and that Anderson and Balor barely got out of it.
I just don't understand. I mean, listen, I'm a big fan of Balor and Anderson, but I just don't. We've said this before. The Revival need help. They need to be booked like a serious threat. They can't be booked like The Miz. The Miz is his own man that can take an ass whipping and still keep his heat. The Revival they're not even over yet. They're not even close to it. They need to be booked strongly. They need to be protected. They need to win matches. They need to do it even in nefarious means, fine. But they're the specialists, and they need to come out looking like roses after the end of something like this and not continuously taking defeats. This is what now the second loss they've had in a matter of 3 weeks or so.
Yeah,
Not good for them.
I agree with you.
Especially given the fact that their promos and the things that they're saying is some of the most interesting developments in professional wrestling I could say in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost I'm almost afraid to say that they've given up hope on them and they're just using them as fodder at this point in time. But I'm holding on to strings here to try to.
It seems almost like they need to do something with Finn. They have nothing else for them to do, so they're putting together. This would be the perfect thing for them to put Dash Wilder or Dawson into a match with Goldust, and Goldust has to go get a tag team partner. That makes a lot more sense right now than putting them against Balor and Anderson and Gallows.
Yeah, I'm with you there. After this, we had a backstage segment with Sasha and Bayley. Bayley taking on Asuka later on in the evening. Sasha's been rewatching the match that she had over and over again. And a little bit of what might look like some friendly competition between Sasha and Bayley, with Bayley saying, hey, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to beat Asuka, something that you couldn't do. But again, planting some seeds for some sort of turn that we've been getting teased about for what seems like a year now.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, it did what it needed to in just a couple minutes, and that was just fine. Then we got a cruiserweight tag team match. We got we talked about last week Rockstar Spud coming in to be the GM. Well, he has a new name, and his name is Drake Maverick.
That is like it's like you had a robot that generated names for movie characters in the 80s. And that was one of the rejected ones. Like, can't you see Stallone or Schwarzenegger as Drake Maverick?
Yeah, it also sounds like it's from Top Gun. The weird thing about this is that Michael Cole mentioned that he used to be called Rockstar Spud and that his new name is Drake Maverick. Like, because people just change their names when they change jobs. Like, why did you actually bring light to that? You want to change his name, fine. WWE has done that on many occasions. But they don't usually mention the previous name that they worked under.
They did it for Finn, they did it for Hideo Itami, and they did it for Asuka.
They did it in NXT.
Yeah.
They didn't do it on the main roster.
I agree. But I mean, there are ways to do that probably a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, not seeing it is hard to kind of judge that at all or weigh in too much, I guess.
So the match was Mustafa Ali and Cedric Alexander against Tony Nese and Drew Gulak. Pretty short match, like 5 minutes or so. And the good guys went over here. But I did like some of the work that Maverick was doing. He was very much promoting, hey, we're doing this tournament to crown a new champion. I want to make 205 Live the best television show on the WWE Network. Good stuff. He announced matches for 205 Live, such as Kalisto taking on Lince Dorado, and Roderick Strong debuting on 205 Live to take on Hideo Itami.
Oh, that's interesting.
And real quick, since we don't typically cover those, Kalisto beat Dorado in what was said to be a very good match. And then Roderick Strong beat Hideo Itami.
Well, very interesting. I still think that as a separate brand, there's little, if anything, they can do to make 205 Live anything but a failure. And that's just because they'll never give them the platform that they need to get over a show that's being seen by a fraction of their fan base. In general, they've done nothing to show that this could be anything special, but give them a chance give them the props for trying again and basically rebooting the division in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Then we got Kurt Angle coming out, and he is out to announce the participants in the Women's Elimination Chamber that will be happening this month on pay-per-view. Right from the start, Angle just seemed really off, like not in a good state of mind. Like he looked like he was just glass-eyed. He was talking really slowly with no enthusiasm behind anything he was saying. It was really strange. And then he said the participants, who were going to be Bayley, Mandy Rose, Mickie James, Sonya Deville, Sasha Banks, and of course, Alexa Bliss. And he mentions that, you notice I didn't say Nia Jax because I have Nia going up against Asuka one-on-one, and if Nia beats Asuka, then she'll be added to the WrestleMania match to make it a triple threat. Which is dumb because we saw Asuka beat Nia, albeit a count out, or not a count out, what was it, a referee stoppage a couple weeks ago. Whatever. But then Alexa comes out, and she hit one of the best promos that she's done in a long time, and she does good promos.
She is a very good promo, yeah.
She cut Angle down, and Angle tried to come back with saying, "Hey, you haven't defended your title on a pay-per-view since October," and she goes, "Whose fault is that? Like, you're the one who makes the matches, not me."
Touche.
And it was like, oh, burn. And like Angle really seemed out of his element with this whole thing. And then eventually that whole thing ended. This was a strange segment because of Angle's demeanor, one, and two, this just continues with the destruction, I feel like, of Kurt Angle. It feels like every step he makes, he is made to look like a buffoon with his job, and this didn't help that.
Yeah, without being able to see it, I mean, it sounds... Kurt's had some rough times on the mic since coming back. I think that we haven't seen that in a while, so sometimes you just have an off night. That happens, but I love the fact that we're getting this kind of attention on the women's division. I think perhaps the first ever women's elimination chamber should have been held off till next year, just for the fact that we just did the first ever women's rumble, and it would have been a nice thing to promote next year. But excited for that. Would have liked to see matches to find out who was going to be in that elimination chamber match, just like the guys. But maybe that's nitpicking.
Yeah. Then we had Asuka taking on Bayley, and we had a decent match between them. Nothing compared to their NXT matches that they had, and really nothing compared to the Sasha match from last week. And we got some attempts at submissions by Asuka, Bayley getting out of them, but eventually she's able to beat Bayley with the armbar and get the tap out. And then after the match, we had Asuka offer a handshake to Bayley, and Bayley hesitating, but then accepting it. I can't think of I don't think that we've seen on the main roster Asuka demonstrate that sort of respect to anyone. She did on NXT to Ember Moon, I recall.
Sure.
But this was different.
Well, Asuka was also playing at the end of NXT before the Ember Moon feud. She was kind of playing this kind of pseudo. She was still a baby face, but in kind of name only. She was getting a little desperate and taking some heel mannerisms. She's definitely playing the baby face in the main roster. And having her interact and kind of put Bayley over in a little bit because she's the most popular woman right now on the main roster probably isn't a bad thing, especially if they're trying to get Bayley on track for a match with Sasha Banks at WrestleMania, which we hope that we're going to get a chance to see.
Okay. And then we got Miz to come out, and he has Bo Dallas. Curtis Axel was not there. Apparently, they played it off as he was auditioning to play the role of an extra in a movie.
Sounds about right.
And, he did his little bragging bit, and then he was scheduled for a match with Apollo Crews. And this was a Miz match. Miz won. Nothing else really to say about that. I mean, Cruz got in just a little bit of offense in there. I mean, he did have a nice spot where he hit like the standing moonsault followed directly by the standing shooting star, and that shows his great athleticism. But Miz ends up winning.
So Miz just went over clean in that situation?
Yeah.
Excellent. And just giving Apollo Crews a chance to get in some singles matches, I said that I heard nothing about this show, and that's not really true. I did read an article mentioning Apollo Crews saying that they thought that he looked really good in this match. So but you're saying it was just kind of a meh thing.
It was a really short match. It started during a commercial break. When they came back from a commercial break, it was in progress. So they didn't get much TV time out of it. I think it was maybe 5 minutes or less. So to me, a little hard to really get in an idea of looking good, I think, in that time.
Okay.
Then we had the tag team title match, The Bar defending against Seth and Roman. This was a good match going on. And then eventually, of course, we had Jason Jordan come out, and he was in the corner of Seth and Roman, cheering them on. Even at one point, Roman told him he needs to go to the back because we got this. We don't need you. Go back. So you knew he was going to come into play at some point. And that led to Cesaro and Sheamus, seeing that they were overwhelmed, grabbing their belts and trying to leave to take a count-out loss. But Jason Jordan steps in their way to try to prevent them. Cesaro goes to punch Jordan. Jordan blocks and punches Cesaro, then punches Sheamus. Disqualification. The Bar wins. So that is the rematch out of the way. Thank you. And this gives an out to the Jordan and Seth storyline, but it will be interesting to see where they actually go with it from here. If Jason is going to be off TV for even at best a short period of time, at worst maybe a year. They're talking
about Jordan being out of action for a year.
The reports that I've said with this neck injury, he could be out of action for a year.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. Uh, I'm a fan of this. I've really been a fan of the way they book Jason Jordan, and even having to move around and do some of the things they've had to do to keep him out of the ring. I think overall this has been one of the better handled storylines going right now. And everything you mentioned, I like the sound of it at least.
Yeah, it seemed fine. We Afterwards there was a backstage incident where Seth was yelling at Jordan, and uh, Angle sent Jordan home and says stay home until he's medically cleared. So that's their way of writing him off for that period of time. Um, we had Nia Jax beat a jobber relatively quickly, and afterwards Renee Young interviewed her in the ring, asking about her chance of being added to the WrestleMania match. She stared at the sign for a little bit and then told Asuka that she's the only wrestler that Asuka can't beat. It kind of vows to beat her up, and says that she'll beat her up so bad that she's going to have to wear the mask permanently. And short, sweet, to the point.
I mean, how was her tone? Did she do a pretty good job on that promo?
It seemed well, but it also seemed like she wasn't like she didn't like it either. Like didn't like the lines. Like you could tell that it was obviously um, a scripted promo. The last line that she said that uh, you won't be the Empress of tomorrow, you'll be the Empress of yesterday. And she kind of rolled her eyes at that, kind of knowing like that was just a corny line that I said. But she did seem confident for the most part in it.
Well,
And
that's good. One of her big problems has been promo. Quite honestly, Nia Jax is not a great in-ring worker and not a very good promo. I mean, she's got a lot of work to do, and they have a lot of work to really make her kind of fulfill her destiny as this monster heel, I guess. How is she playing this? Because she has been this back and forth, this thing with Enzo that now isn't going on. Was she a heel here?
yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's where she belongs.
Yeah. And then we got right after this another women's segment as we got Mickey James and Sonya Deville going up against one another, and Mickey ends up beating her. Like she started off the match with the upper hand. Sonya got in a little bit of offense, and then Mickey surprised her with a pinfall out of nowhere. This led to a beatdown from the rest of Absolution, and Alexa actually came out to save Mickey, pulled her out of the ring, and help her go back to the backstage, go back up the ramp. And of course, Mickey looks surprised about why she's out there to help her. It is more of is she just looking for help with the whole Elimination Chamber thing? We've seen her do this before, try to play up being on someone's side just to for her to play them.
Which is great, and that's what you have to do when you're an undersized heel. So I think that's a good development. It's something different.
Yeah, we didn't get anything coming back to that later on to secure that thought, but they'll most likely touch on it next week. Yeah, this is where they talked about having a fatal four-way for a second chance to enter the Elimination Chamber next week. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that the Miz match was for a spot in the Elimination Chamber.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes,
So
sorry.
Apollo Crews was up for inclusion in the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah,
Okay,
I I'm
forget
sorry I
every.
forgot that because this the rundown that I'm going through doesn't have it written next to the match like it did for the first one. Uh,
Forget what I said about Bray Wyatt being cool that he was involved in that, because if Apollo Crews is involved in a possible world championship opportunity, it kind of devalues it at this point in his career. Nothing against Apollo, but he's just not the land of opportunity. Maybe that's a Jinder Mahal situation, but yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, because the second chance match is Finn, Matt Hardy, Bray, and Apollo Crews.
And that's happening next week.
Yes.
Let's please, come on, Finn.
Yeah.
There is no reason why John Cena could have literally fought anybody to get in that thing, and Finn Balor could have fought anyone to get in his. Just to do a first time ever match to have Finn and John Cena get together made no sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Though I could. This is something that WWE plays every once in a while with giving you the guy who you did not expect. Like they've done this with Dolph a number of times. They did it with Jinder. Like, what if they just do it with Cruz to give him this one main event and see how he can fare out of it? I wouldn't be completely surprised by that, but Finn should be the favorite.
Oh, of course, and I would be very surprised by that myself.
And then it is time for the main event, which is a triple threat match between John Cena, Braun Strowman, and Elias. Guys who all qualified for the Elimination Chamber the previous week. We got a little mini Elias concert, as you would expect. And then we got the match. This was...
What was the point of this match? Was there anything that set this up?
No.
Okay.
It was announced earlier on in the evening, but it was just a match to put the three guys who already qualified for the Elimination Chamber into something together.
Seems rather pointless.
Oh yeah, it was. And then you thought, oh, when they had the finish with Braun power slamming Cena, Elias shoved Braun out of the ring and stole the win. Like, look at them do that there. It's Elias being opportunistic, getting a win over Cena, but then after the moment that celebration began, what do you think happened?
John Cena jumped up, beat the hell out of Elias, and celebrated.
No.
Braun
killed everyone.
Okay.
Braun power slammed Elias, and then he gave Cena another power slam. Then he gave Elias another power slam, all the while like celebrating. Like his music cut at one point, and he was standing on the ropes like celebrating, and he's like, I don't know if he thought maybe they were off air, but he like looks over at the Tron and he looks at the crowd and he's pointing to his ears and shrugging. He like, where'd my music go? It was all meant to make Braun look strong. So they took Elias beating Cena, albeit opportunistic, still a big deal, and immediately threw it out the window and was like, he eats two power slams from Braun. Cena even got another one, so it was weird.
Having not seen it, that doesn't sound like a bad thing to me. I mean, Elias has not even really had any really major feud yet, and Braun Strowman is one of their guys right now. So they give him a little bit of a rub. He's involved with main event players, and Braun Strowman destroys everybody. Braun Strowman destroying people makes fans happy. So once again, not having seen this sounds pretty good to me.
I think that it devalued Elias a bit, makes him look like more of a chump. I think that if Elias, taking advantage of that win, should, the moment he got the 3, got the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, and that's a good way to do it as well. You know, I can see that.
Cena can take that and be just fine. We know that.
Listen, no, I disagree with you there. Elias can take a power slam. Anyone on that roster can take a power slam destruction from Braun Strowman. They're not going to be hurt by it. Lesnar can take that and not be hurt by it. Strowman's one of the strongest booked people in the world over the past year. I think you're right in the fact that it doesn't allow Elias to kind of move up and celebrate and show how smart he is. But being the foil for Braun Strowman, that's the job of 90% of the people in WWE right now. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but I still think that it kind of makes Elias look like a bit of a chump there.
Okay.
But that did it for Raw. It was a show. It wasn't as good as last week. But let's head into SmackDown Live, where let's see if they go forward with all of the terrible graphics that they did last week. Spoiler alert, they didn't. They still had some, but they certainly did cut it off for the most part. They didn't have lockdown, which was good.
That's good.
Shane started off the show already in the ring, so great. We don't have to hear his music for a whole entrance. And he talks about the stakes of later on this evening of KO and Sami facing each other for a title match, and said that he brings out Bryan to talk about how Bryan calls this the land of opportunity, but yet he keeps on giving people who are unjust opportunities. Huge Rusev Day chant rings out, and they both pause. Shane looks around and goes, "Duly noted."
I love it. That's great.
Then he goes on to say, like, you keep on giving two guys these opportunities. When's the last time you gave anyone else an opportunity? And Bryan talks about how the referee made a mistake, so he tried to turn a negative into a positive and create a big match and get someone in line for this, and then kind of be over it. Then Shane, I thought that this was actually a good bit of promo work from Shane after this. He brings up Bryan's yes movement, and he tries to feign being emotional about it, which that didn't work too well, but the topic was good. He brings up the yes movement and how Bryan pushed for himself to be heard, to be seen, and he knows that he would much rather be wrestling than being not wrestling. And that got a big pop from the crowd. And then he says, "I can't help but think that you are living vicariously through KO and Sami." Oh, the fans booed the hell out of him. And I think that was the point, to get that reaction, and they got it. And I thought that was fantastic.
The fans booed Shane, or they booed Daniel?
They booed Shane.
Oh, okay.
I thought that was fantastic to hear him say that. That was one of the most purposely heelish things I feel like Shane has done in a while.
So when you describe it to me, it doesn't sound heelish, but it sounds right. Like it very well could be that. So it seems like it's logical within the sense of the storyline, which I like.
But the fact that Bryan is such a well-loved, beloved character, when you do something like that to a beloved character, it's heelish, I think.
Oh no, it is, because once again, he's over and more popular than Shane McMahon. So
Yeah.
You're right. But once again, when heels have justification for the way they feel, everything works better.
Mm-hmm. AJ Styles came out at this point, and almost felt like it was pointless for him to have come out, but he pretty much says, "I've been busting my ass since I've been the champion, been traveling all over, and I'm sick of management obsessing over KO and Sami. You know what? This is my house, but I'll do whatever I need to do. I'll fight whoever wins tonight, and I'm going to walk out as champion, and then I'm going to go to WrestleMania." And that was pretty much it. I thought this was a good segment. Like I said, I thought AJ didn't need to be out there, but the stuff between Bryan and Shane, I thought was pretty good. Then our first match. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay.
No. I said everything that came to my mind.
Okay. We did get a little one of those backstage segments where Shinsuke just pops up to AJ and just says, "I'm gonna beat you at WrestleMania," and then just walks away. I kind of like this. He's playing head games with AJ.
Beautiful. And keeping it short and sweet, even more
Yeah.
important.
Our first match of the evening is Liv Morgan taking on Charlotte. And the only thing that I could think of during this match is I don't know what's more annoying. The sounds that Sarah Logan makes at ringside or the sounds that Carmella makes during her matches, because both are pretty awful. She was just like screeching and like not even like come on, just yelling sounds. It was bad. Charlotte wins. Liv got a little bit of offense in there, and this was a little bit longer than your typical women's match would be. But, Charlotte ends up winning the match, and that was that. I was waiting for Riot Squad beatdown afterwards, Becky Lynch, Naomi save or something like that, but that didn't happen. So good on WWE for not doing what they normally do.
Sure. Sounds good to me.
We got the Bludgeon Brothers in a squash match against a couple jobbers, beat them pretty quickly. And as they exited the ring and started their way back back up the ramp, the Usos came out, and they had a moment where they stared down for a second, but then the Usos walked past them to the ring. Harper held out his arm over Rowan to be like, no, we're not doing this right now. They just grabbed their hammers and left. And then the Usos cut a hell of a promo again. This one wasn't very PG, I thought. Like they didn't directly say anything that was off color, but they made a lot of references to prison stuff, such as you're talking about getting booked, getting your fingers printed, orange jumpsuits, cold showers, assuming the positions, sleeping on concrete slabs, and one of them goes, "Trust me, I know." A little bit of playback on one of them getting a DUI a few weeks ago, and they just cut a passionate promo about holding down the tag team division. They brought up their past about how we used to wear face paint, we used to wear bright colors, we used to be flying Usos and all that, and now people used to say, they're all right. Now they're saying match of the night. And I was like, damn, this is so true. Looking back at what they used to be and being like, we were kind of like, they're all right. They're good in the ring. Their characters are stale. And just seeing this complete 180 on them, their characters, it was great.
Sounds great to me. I still would have liked to see their heel run last a little bit longer because I enjoyed it so much. But I think they've done a good job transitioning the babyface. They've changed their offense. This is like the third version of the Uso offense. You had the high flying, really crowd pleasing. Then you had a lot of you had more vicious attacking. Now you have kind of a hybrid of both. So this sounds like a great promo. I'm looking forward to maybe going back and watching this.
Yeah. Then we got backstage Brian announcing the first ever top 10 list that was compiled by wrestlers only. He goes, Shane and I had no hand in picking this. But the writers and Vince probably did. So, number 10, Ty Dillinger. Really? That right there, the fact that they did that, shows that this is all a work. There's nothing legitimate about it.
Well, and of course there's never anything legitimate about it. It's not like this is breaking kayfabe completely. This is just another storyline.
Yeah. Number 9, Randy Orton. Number 8, Becky Lynch. Number 7, the Usos. Number 6, the New Day. Number 5, Bobby Roode. Number 4, Naomi. Number 3, Nakamura. Number 2, Charlotte. And AJ is number 1. No Rusev, no KO or Sami. What came into play a little bit later on was New Day being ranked above the tag team champions. Graves talked about that as a great injustice out of the whole thing.
So what does this ranking mean?
Absolutely nothing.
And they did nothing but to announce that, and that was it.
Yes.
Oh, sounds like that was pointless.
And Graves complained about. Graves said he was surprised that Randy was ranked so low, that the New Day was ranked higher than the champions. Where's Rusev? And then Saxton goes, well, it's a popularity contest. Like, you're already discrediting your whole thing.
I mean, I hope they have something for this, because if they're just going to do this as some kind of like clickbait list that they're going to put out, then why? It doesn't seem like it's going to you need to have some kind of relevancy to this list that means something, not just we might use this to book matches, more like this is how we're going to use this. But they probably have no idea, quite honestly.
Yeah. I didn't mention this earlier, but throughout the night, they had the New Day backstage on Twitter duty, pretty much just answering questions that people were sending them on Twitter. And they did have one interesting spot where, after all this was announced, the rankings, they said to one another, we got 6th as a team. If they broke us up and had us individually, who do you think would be ranked the highest? And the first thing that came to my mind was, they could tease tension between them here. With like X saying, it would be me, and Biggie going, no, I think it would be me. But they didn't go that way. Both Xavier and Biggie unanimously agreed that Kofi would be the top one, because Kofi has the most titles out of all of them. And that 2018 will see Kofi win the WWE title, and then they will all share it.
Well, that's not going to happen, but it's an interesting thing to say.
But besides that, then the next thing that we had was the U.S. title match. Bobby Roode, or as Rusev likes to call him, Bob Roode, taking on Rusev. And this was a very good match, I thought. They had 2 commercial breaks in it, so they had time. I think they went 15-ish minutes. And crowd was pretty split, but they did get, I think they were mostly behind Rusev. And had some good back and forth, but eventually Bobby Roode got the glorious DDT, gets the win. But then, after the match, Randy Orton comes out and RKO's everyone. He RKO's Bobby Roode as he's doing his pose. He RKO's Aiden, and then Rusev gets up and he RKO's him.
Why?
That is the exact thing that Tom Phillips asked. He goes, why did he do this? I've heard some people thinking that maybe it's because he is upset at his low ranking, and that this will be a way for him to get higher in the rankings. Okay, by attacking the U.S. champion and then 2 guys who weren't ranked. I don't know. Are they putting him into the U.S. title picture against Bobby Roode?
That could be interesting. Randy going after a secondary title, something we have not seen. So I think I'm not opposed to that. I still think Bobby Roode is a relatively bland babyface, and I think Rusev is on fire. Not capitalizing on that is a mistake. Plain and simple. And having him go out there and just eat an RKO. This is, I don't look at an RKO in the same way I look at a Braun Strowman power slam. I think that every time you have him go out there and just make Rusev look like a chump, it's bad for him. So maybe I'm contradicting myself from earlier on, but I don't like that. I don't like the sound of that at all, mostly because I don't think Randy Orton's all that interesting.
No, if you put Randy Orton against Bobby Roode, you have two of the most boring baby faces. Two guys who work so much better as heels going against one another.
And showing
It
up,
almost is like they cancel each other out altogether and a match doesn't even happen.
and showing and having this situation happen once again. Why is Randy Orton out there, and how does he a babyface if he's going out there and attacking people for no reason? I'm just not a fan of that. Steve Austin did that well because he was Stone Cold Steve Austin. But even then, there was usually some kind of provocation, not just because he might go out there, stun everybody to grab a microphone and cut someone down, but that doesn't sound like this was that either.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right there. He always had a purpose. Like, if you got in the way of what he was going to do, he's going to take you out. You're just incidental at that point. But that wasn't what happened here. We got Gable and Benjamin did their own little kind of take on the fashion files with their board and pictures on it. And they just... This is a point where WWE used some of that flashing the words on the screen, and it was kind of lame. There were some lame jokes there, but this led to Gable and Benjamin challenging the Ascension for a match, and then we had a commercial, and then we had said match. Albeit a short match, this was the best that the Ascension has looked in a long, long time. They looked motivated. They got in offense. Like, Connor actually was no-selling some of the offense because he's bigger and stronger. I was like, look at them actually doing something with them here. They end up losing, but I was really surprised by how much motivation it seemed like the Ascension had and how much offense they gave them, and not just being a squash match there.
The Ascension were terribly mishandled coming up to the main roster, and maybe they didn't have it in them to be a special act in the main roster. Who knows? But they certainly were never done any favors. They busted their asses. They've done what they've been asked to do. I'm sure they go out there every single night on the road and do their best, and they've found a little niche for themselves next to the Fashion Police. So I'm glad they're giving them a little bit of a shot. Maybe they'll catch lightning in a bottle with them. Stranger things have happened.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the main event. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. They had some backstage segments leading up to this with Renee Young interviewing each one and playing up the tension between the two of them. And AJ was on commentary during the whole thing. And we got a Sami and Kevin match, albeit a slightly shorter one than what we see. There was some good aggression from both guys at certain points. With Sami getting some stiff-looking shots in on KO right back on Sami. And Sami seemed to have had KO's number at one point, and then they're outside of the ring, and he gets into AJ's face on commentary and starts taunting him, and then AJ attacks Sami, and then attacks KO. And true to the rules, Sami won this match by DQ. The ref threw the match out because AJ attacked both of them eventually, but he first went after Sami because Sami was in his face. And then Bryan comes out, and do you know what he did?
What do you do?
He made a triple threat match for Fastlane. So, KO, Sami, and AJ Styles for the WWE Championship.
This just doesn't sound all that interesting to me.
No, they could have had Sami win via DQ and have a fresh, interesting match, albeit for one pay-per-view, but to build up something there, and you can keep on building up. If your goal is to have Kevin and Sami at WrestleMania, you can still do that. You can have the tension of Kevin being jealous at Sami, and then at Fastlane, after Sami loses, you have him turn back face as Kevin turns on him fully at that point in time. And you'd have a fresh story going on then. But no, let's just put them both in. Let's have them still around this, and it's just the same old shit.
I would like to see the fact that this was all their plan all along, and they're still best friends, and they just wanted to have this thing. That would make more sense to me, especially since they went from being best buds to hating each other overnight, which I never am a big fan of.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I would love to see ultimately, because I want to keep seeing more heel Sami Zayn because it's so good. And give them an opportunity to do some tag work, I think, maybe, as well. If they end up being a tag team contender against babyface Usos, I think that they could put on fantastic matches.
Wonderful. I think that would be a really good idea.
But if what they are doing is leading to them breaking up, why not just give Sami a title shot? Sami's never had a title shot, a world title shot on the main roster. It's a little fresher. It's something new. They love new. They love first time ever. So why not do that?
No idea, my friend.
So that does it for television for this week. We did get, and we have a little bit of time still before we have Elimination Chamber and Fastlane. We got a question sent to us, actually by my brother, and he wanted us to address this on a show. Yeah, I got asked a couple weeks ago, but with the Rumble pre-show and then the Rumble aftermath and recap show, we didn't really have time for it. But he proposed to us with having the Horsemen be entered into the WWE Hall of Fame. It allowed Barry Windham, allowed Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson to be added to the Hall of Fame. Guys that maybe WWE might not want to enter into the Hall of Fame as singles people specifically. He asked if there were any other tag teams or factions that WWE could do this with in order to get someone else into, or some other people into, the Hall of Fame who by single standards probably wouldn't do so. So we thought about this, and we've had a few weeks to think about this. So we came up with, at least I have written down here, some 4 factions rather, that we think could viably fit that criteria. We have the Hart Foundation, the Hart Foundation faction, not the Hart Foundation tag team of Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart, but the faction that had Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, Owen Hart, and Davey Boy Smith and
Brian Pillman. Yeah.
I think that we can both agree. I mean, didn't we do a top 5 before of people who we thought should be in the Hall of Fame?
We sure have, yeah.
And I don't know if it was one of us or both of us, but I think we both agree that Davey Boy Smith should be in there.
For sure.
And Owen Hart.
Well, and there's some complications there.
Yeah, Owen Hart's the complication, though. Well,
Owen's a complication, and I think with Davey Boy, I really do think it comes down to he's going to be a posthumous induction. They just don't like to do multiples of those every year because it's very depressing, and it casts light on the brutality of this business, especially in the past. But I do think Davey Boy will get in eventually. But listen, that Hart Foundation faction did not last a long period of time, but it was during a very important part of the transition to the Attitude Era, and they were hot. And I mean, the rundown of that faction, those are pretty good, pretty talented guys in there. And it was probably Bret Hart's one of the best runs of his career. So I think that they would deserve it.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. We talked about the Midnight Express. Last year, the Rock and Roll Express were inducted into the Hall of Fame, and their counterparts from that era were the Midnight Express. And there was a couple iterations of the Midnight Express. Altogether, you had Bobby and Stan Lane, Dennis Condrey, and then you can't have the Midnight Express without their manager, Jim Cornette.
And this would be this. There is a lot to be said. The fact that if there wasn't the Midnight Express, there wouldn't have been the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, what those two teams did, kind of traveling all throughout the country and headlining as a tag team, headlining shows on a consistent basis, really, really incredible, and really built tag team wrestling. And you need a foil. You can't be the greatest team of all time, but if you don't have that legendary feud, if Ric Flair didn't have Sting or didn't have Steamboat, if Hogan didn't have Andre, and even though those definitely weren't the greatest matches of all time, but you've got to have some other great to go up against. So I think it's fair. I think it would get a handful of guys in that would obviously never get another chance. Now, the Midnight Express did all of their work basically in different entities from the WWE, except for a couple revisions of the squad during that weird NWA invasion that happened at one point.
Yeah.
And also with having people like Bob Holly and Bart Gunn being involved in it. But the two really famous iterations, I think absolutely deserve it. And as the WWE continues to validate some of the stars that did not make their name in the WWE, it just makes sense. And Jim Cornette would be beautiful there.
Yeah, and they seem to be on okay terms with Cornette, especially with him inducting the Rock and Roll Express last year. Another one that we talked about the possibility of was the Dangerous Alliance. Maybe a forgotten faction from the WCW era, but one that was pretty important, I think. Paulie Dangerously, or Paul Heyman as we come to know him now, was the leader and manager of that, had Rick Rude, Steve Austin, Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, Larry Zbyszko, and Medusa as their valet. I mean, look down that. We talked about Arn Anderson in the Four Horsemen, Bobby Eaton in the Midnight Express, and Austin's already a Hall of Famer, and you have the chance. Medusa's already a Hall of Famer, although not known as Medusa, and it gives a chance for Bobby Eaton there, and for Larry Zbyszko, who is a true legend of the industry. Albeit this wasn't some of his best work. Obviously, his AWA and his WWF work was at the height of his career. But I mean, that guy, I think, absolutely deserves to be recognized. And if it's a part of a big faction like this that was a big deal during their time in WCW, why not? And then Rick Rude. I mean, when's that? We got to see him added in last year.
Yeah, several of these guys are there. So this is really kind of highlighting a faction that was pretty impressive and probably underrepresented and underrespected over the years. But just when you see those guys all thrown in, probably, I mean, there's a good argument that none of those guys did their best work in that faction. possibly. Yeah. But having that group together, very interesting. This is a kind of thing that really nods to the history of professional wrestling and some exciting stuff that was done in WCW when WCW before the Nitro days, before this was the Monday Night Wars, when it was wrestling, I'm really into that.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. We also had on here. We have on here Triple Threat. Now, Triple Threat had a few different iterations. The first one was Shane Douglas, Chris Benoit, and Dean Malenko. We know they're not going to do anything with Chris Benoit related to it. But they also had an iteration of it, and this was an ECW faction. Then they had Douglas reform it with Chris Candido and Brian Lee, and Bam Bam Bigelow then joined the group. And then I think people also get this confused for I don't know if they called it the Triple Threat, but you had Douglas, Candido, and Bigelow in WCW form a group.
Candido wasn't part of that group. That was the New Jersey Triad that I think you're talking about. That wasn't Douglas, and that was Bigelow. Maybe you're not, but that was Bigelow, DDP, and Canyon.
I do remember that, but I'm looking at the Wikipedia
page. Okay.
It says it was a short-lived group together in WCW.
Well, I stand corrected. You also had, I believe, the Triple Threat at one point contained Lance Storm. So I could be wrong on that. I think we talked about that a little bit.
Actually, you're right there.
Now this is probably the biggest stretch, but this is a way, just looking at the lineup of this and knowing what kind of happened. And they like to talk about the Dudley Boys. They like to talk about all the ECW guys that did stuff in the WWE. We do not get as much love for some of the other talents that were not ever featured in the WWE or never had real success there. And being able to get someone like Chris Candido, who did do work in the WWE, who had some success, but was an excellent talent in his own right. Someone like Lance Storm, absolutely Shane Douglas, getting the nod there. And Bam Bam Bigelow, I mean, one of the greatest, most agile big men of all time. This is a true guy that was a throwback to the territory days, came in and out of WWE early on, while he was still one of those guys that just looked like an absolute monster, crazy person with one of the most interesting looks of all time, just going into a territory and being red hot. So, yeah, this might be a stretch as a faction, especially with so many iterations and maybe not as classic or as famous as the others. But it catches a lot of guys that have slipped through the cracks. Lance Storm is just a machine. And I love everything about Lance Storm, his work, and what he was able to accomplish.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you there. Definitely one of the underrated guys of his time. But maybe we're forgetting some people here. Let us know. Comment on the website or send us a tweet. Let us know if there's a group, a faction that you think is Hall of Fame worthy as a whole, that maybe has some guys in it that you wouldn't think of just by themselves. Anything else that you wanna touch on before we head out here?
No, sir. I think I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you everyone once again for joining us on the show. Make sure that you follow us on all of our social media outlets. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MissSpots. We're always live tweeting along to Monday Night Raw, SmackDown Live, and the pay-per-views. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/MissSpots. You can listen to this podcast in one of many different wonderful fashions, such as our website, MissSpotsPodcast.com, or simply MissSpots.com. Or you can subscribe to us on any of the great podcasting services out there, such as iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Overcast, Podcast Addict. You can subscribe to us there and get brand new episodes to the device of your choice every Thursday for free. For Kevin, my name's Mike. We'll catch you guys next week. Good night. Good wrestling.